So South Africa is taking Israel to court. Here's a PBS headline: Israel to defend itself at World Court after South Africa files genocide accusations. And we're going to get to that piece in just a minute. But in the run up to this, there was actually a very good article in Haaretz which broke this down. So state officials fear International Court of Justice could charge Israel with genocide in Gaza. The International Court has great influence in shaping international law. Its recognition of South Africa's claim may cement the perception that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, says Dr. Shelley Aviv Yaini, an expert on international law. The security establishment and the state attorney's office are concerned that the International Court of Justice at The Hague will charge Israel with genocide in the Gaza Strip, this at the request of South Africa, which petitioned the court over the weekend. Haaretz has learned that a senior legal expert dealing with the matter has in recent days warned IDF brass, including Chief of Staff Herzl Halevi, that there is real danger that the court will issue an injunction calling on Israel to halt its fire, noting that Israel is bound by the court's rulings. The military and the state attorney's office have already begun preparing to deal with the complaint, and a hearing on the matter will be held at the Foreign Ministry on Monday. Don't forget, this is an Israeli newspaper that is reporting this. According to international law experts, the proceeding may cement claims of genocide against Israel and thus lead to its diplomatic isolation and to boycott or sanctions against it or against Israeli businesses. Unlike the International Criminal Court at The Hague, which conducts proceedings against private individuals, the International Court of Justice deals with judicial disputes between countries. Israel does not recognize the jurisdiction of the criminal court, which is conducting investigations into alleged war crimes by both Israelis and Palestinians, including in the current war. In contrast, it is signatory to the Treaty Against Genocide, by the power of which the court derives its authority to hear the complaint filed against Israel by South Africa. According to the court's prior ruling, any signatory country may file a complaint against another country, even if it's not directly harmed by it. In other words, they can basically bring the case on behalf of the people who are being genocided, which they are. BRICS starting out the new year busy, not sitting on their feet. In its appeal to the court, South Africa claimed that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza and is not acting to punish those inciting to genocide. Where have we heard debates about incitement to genocide? We're not talking about college kids running around on a campus waving a flag in the air. We're talking about an actual genocide being cheered on. It accused Israel of, quote, indiscriminate use of force and forcible removal of residents, and it claimed that among the reported Israeli actions are, quote, crimes against humanity and war crimes. It also claimed that some of these actions meet the basic definition of genocide. South Africa has requested that the court discuss the matter in the coming days and issue a temporary injunction against Israel that calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. According to the petition, this step is necessary to protect the Palestinians from, quote, further irreparable damage. South Africa further requested that the court order Israel to allow Palestinians removed from their homes in the Gaza Strip to return to them. I don't know what homes they're talking about, sadly, to stop depriving them of food, water, and humanitarian aid, to ensure that Israelis are not inciting to genocide and punish those who do, and to allow an independent investigation of its actions. In its response, Israel accused South Africa of a blood libel, big surprise, which is without legal merit and constitutes a base exploitation and contempt of court. The Foreign Ministry statement reads, South Africa is collaborating with a terrorist group. Can you believe this? Collaborating with a terrorist group that calls for Israel's annihilation. Hamas is the one responsible for the suffering of the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip when it uses them as human shields, blah, 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 steals humanitarian aid. As to accusations of harm to civilians, the ministry said that Israel is committed to international law, abides by it, and directs its military efforts against Hamas and terrorist groups that collaborate with them and against them only. Now, here's a couple interesting pieces of this article. We're almost done with this one. I know this is a lot of reading, but this is a huge thing. Professor Eliav Lieblich, hope I got that name right, An expert on international law at Tel Aviv University explains that South Africa makes two central claims: that Israel isn't acting to prevent statements that call for genocide, and that it is committing actions that constitute genocide. These are very, very harsh things to Israeli ears, but their effect must not be ignored, and therefore the claims must be responded to seriously. Dr. Shelley Aviviani, an expert on international law at Haifa University, likewise believes that South Africa's complaint should not be taken lightly, as the ICJ has great influence in shaping international law, and its rulings impact the perceptions of the international community. Therefore, the recognition of South Africa's claim may cement the perception that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Genocide is a violation, the proof of which in court requires two elements, Lieblich asks. First, you have to show intention of annihilation, and second, certain actions in the field that promote this intention. According to South Africa, the intention is proven by the statements of senior Israeli figures and a public atmosphere of erasing or flattening Gaza, and the widespread harm to civilians and the hunger in Gaza show the factual element of the deed. So, I know that was a lot of reading, but it's kind of remarkable that that article was printed in an Israeli newspaper. It's also really, like I said, I always check myself whenever I say that something is encouraging or heartwarming, because obviously the situation in Gaza is just apocalyptic and awful and dreadful and horrible and unthinkable. But, we named the BRICS partnership the winner of 2023. And it is heartening to see not just South Africa, but the fact that they are part of this sort of alternative power structure to NATO and the G7. It is heartening to see organized political sentiment sort of orient itself against Israel in this way, because that's honestly more than I thought I was going to see 12 weeks ago. So I know there was a lot of reading, and my take is pretty brief because it's kind of a remarkable thing to see. But go ahead. We have one more article to read, but I'll toss to you first.
I think it does give me a little bit of hope for that sort of alternative system. And, the faster that BRICS can kind of build maybe some institutions that are kind of similar to the UN, I think we would be looking, I think that's very far in the future. But it does give me hope that perhaps there would actually be a way to really actually have international law, because we said we wanted international law. We've never acted that way. We've never followed international law. That means multiple different countries. It's just kind of tossed to the side. So it is encouraging. And the other thing that I would say is obviously the countries that are part of the BRICS grouping are smart. South Africa is the appropriate country to bring this forward.
Yeah, if not them, who?
They chose their candidate to bring those allegations to the International Court of Justice. Well,
indeed. And as I said, we started this out by citing the present day article, Israel to defend itself at World Court after South Africa files genocide accusations. So Israel is going to attempt to make its case, and I've already seen some super chats and some chats letting us know this. I did know this. Mr. Alan Dershowitz will be representing the nation of Israel at the International Court of Justice. Yes, that's a sequel segment. We're going to do that on Friday. I'll tease that out. That just broke within the past few hours, so we didn't have time to put anything together. But yeah, we'll have more to say about that, obviously.
Well, my just preliminary statement is if Brianna Joy Gray can take him down on the rising, I don't know how he's going to handle the International Court of Justice. All right.
South Africa should hire her. Could be a rematch. Hey, that Hill Rising shit, that's YouTube. That was just a warm-up. Scrimmage. That was a scrimmage, motherfucker. Here we are where it counts. Israel will defend itself before the United Nations top court against charges that it has engaged in genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, officials said on Tuesday, setting the stage for what is likely to be a landmark case in international law. I just got to say, if Bree does represent South Africa, she's going to have to make sure she brings all different shades of paper to the court. You have to have your props handy. Don't forget that. Make sure you pack the yellow paper and the orange paper and the white paper, because you don't want to get there and be like, oh, fuck, I forgot the paper.
I know there might be some situations where you need some purple paper.
Cover all your bases. Cover all your bases, because it sucks, right? That's called the actor's dream. The actor's dream, I've had it a million times in my life, where you are supposed to go on stage and do a play, and you realize that you have not been to any of the rehearsals, you have not studied any of your lines, you just have to go out and perform a 2-hour play knowing absolutely nothing of what to do on stage. That's called the actor's nightmare. And I've had that a million times in my life.
I'm having it right now.
So that's her nightmare. I show up to the International Court of Justice without my paper. I don't have my construction paper. So make sure you prepare. Make sure you prepare if that ends up happening. South Africa launched a case Friday at the International Court of Justice at The Hague, Netherlands, saying that the Israeli military campaign targeting Hamas has resulted in enough death, destruction, and humanitarian crisis in Gaza to meet the threshold of genocide under international law. South Africa asked the court to order Israel to halt its attacks in Gaza. Israel rarely cooperates in international court cases, I wonder why, dismissing the United Nations and international tribunals as unfair and biased. Its decision to respond to the charge signals that the government is concerned about the potential damage to its reputation. The genocide charge...
I'm sorry, they don't participate that often because it depends on Dershowitz's schedule. He's so busy defending other people.
Exactly. They can't always get their main guy. That's why he's not available all the time. If we can't get Dershowitz, that's it. We can't go. The genocide charge strikes at the heart of Israel's national identity. The country sees itself as a bulwark of security for Jews after the Holocaust killed 6 million Jews, and world support for Israel's creation in Palestine in 1948 was deeply rooted in outrage over Nazi atrocities. Yes, the Convention Against Genocide was drawn up by world powers the same year in hopes of preventing similar atrocities. Yes, this is one of the great ironies of Israel, is that it was created alongside the United Nations, which was formed to prevent war and genocide. It was formed to prevent genocide against everyone. That's why the Jewish Voice for Peace activists hold up that brilliant sign, never again for anyone. Never again means never again for anyone, including the victims of Israeli violence, which they don't seem to take to heart. Ilan Levy, an official in the Israeli Prime Minister's office, accused South Africa of giving political and legal cover to Hamas after its October 7th attack triggered Israel's campaign. The state of Israel will appeal before the International Court of Justice at The Hague to dispel South Africa's absurd blood libel. So the point of that is that they're actually going to fight this case because they feel it is in their interest to actually go and hash this out. And they are picking, yes, Alan Dershowitz to go and represent them at the International Court of Justice. But we've said from the very start of this, I shouldn't say from the very start of this, because that would be giving myself too much credit. I thought this was going to be business as usual, where Israel just gets away with doing whatever the hell it wants with no damage to its reputation. It seems like that's not going to happen. It seems like this is going to become at a cost, and that cost is, as AOC would say, reputational harm in the short term. And that may appear as a slap on the wrist in the short term, but down the road, I do believe they will be a pariah state for this. This will not be forgiven, and this will not be forgotten. And it falls to everybody not to forgive or forget this, because unfortunately, it's probably too late for Gaza. The North looks like an apocalyptic landscape. It's a wasteland. We did a segment, Russell and I sat in on a Jimmy Dore segment where they played video. I mean, Jimmy called it a moonscape. That's exactly what it looks like. Tragically, it is likely too late for Gaza, but it's not too late, and it'll never be too late to bring Israel to justice on the world stage. And that doesn't mean terrorism. That doesn't mean wiping it out. We're not barbarians like the Israeli state are. It means they become a pariah state on the world forum. And that's what they have to become. There has to be justice for this. And there is hope that there will be justice for this. And it falls to us, everybody in the world, to see that there's justice for this by not forgetting about this, not come 2024 when some other crisis blows up in our face after Labor Day and we all get scared into voting for Joe Biden because, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. It falls to us to have some fucking resolve, have some fucking backbone, and not let the people of the world forgive or forget what has happened these past 12 weeks, which is the mass slaughter of thousands upon thousands of innocent women, men, and children.
Yeah, and just to kind of, you mentioned you'd wished you'd seen that Palestinian documentary that John Pilger had done earlier. You might have known more. So I'd kind of done a lot of my Palestine research. Now, at the time when I'd done that, it was probably back in like 2017. So I didn't have the same political orientation that I have today. But even back then, I remember watching countless documentaries and just being horrified by it. And that's just because I was someone, I'm curious about things. I heard things mentioned and I found it. The thing that's happened with this situation is it's become a world event. And that's, I mean, as horrible and terrible as what's going on in Gaza, that was one of the issues. It wasn't a world event. The violence was, it was horrible, it was terrible, but it was a little bit more minor, not as on a big scale. It didn't last as long. And so you just have so many more people delving into this and, finding a lot of these really like brilliant communicators such as Gabor Mate, Miko Peled, Norman Finkelstein, and Ilan Pape, and dozens of others that have really been contributing to this space for a long time. All of the history is there. It's there for people. It just needed a spark for people to discover that. So the sparks happened. Let's see what the masses are able to accomplish. And because of that, the masses can't let up. You have to keep up the pressure campaign on this. And, we need justice in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a step towards that. It's a symbolic step in the short term, but it's significant enough where Israel feels a need to actually engage. I mean, that's more than I thought they'd feel a need to do. I mean, in the past, they would have just blown this off. It said that right there in the article. They usually, international court has a problem. Yeah, go get your fucking shine box, right?
Yeah.
Right. And they're used to not giving a shit.
Right. And just in case, it was kind of mentioned briefly in that article. So there are two of these courts. We often talk about the ICC, and then there's this International Court of Justice. The ICC, that's the one that indicted like Putin for evacuating children from a war zone. That was his crime. This one, it also is the court that I think convicted Gaddafi of, whatever it was, ethnic cleansing, whatever they accused him of at the time. Most of the people that have been convicted through the ICC have been African leaders. There hasn't been, a Western leader that's been convicted. And a lot of people see the ICC as sort of an arm of Western hegemony. The IOJ is different. It does have a little bit more standing. And a little bit more weight behind it. And so it is good that that's the route that we took, or that South Africa took by recommending it to that. That is the more responsible step to take. And hopefully the resolution will have more weight and have more meaning on this issue.
Well, as the article explained, this is the court, and I'm not a lawyer. I didn't know this prior to having read it, but this is apparently the court where nations can seek to reconcile with other nations. And so that's why it's brought there.
Please clap.